welcome to the Clashing of Steel. And today I am talking about teamwork, especially between the melee infantries and the ranged units. As you can see, I am playing the Barbarian Tier 5 Premium Slingers. I usually don't prefer to play ranged units, because they require defending, and there lately haven't been many players who are willing to defend them, or many archers who are willing to take the risks. And I have seen that many of those few, perhaps even new players, can't actually see all the options they have, or at least not use them properly. The biggest mistake, for example, is going alone, or at least without some form of defense. Being alone on one side of the map is not a great option. It usually isn't even good for melee infantry to just go alone from one side, but if you're playing ranged units, that is something you should definitely avoid. Because if you are defended, there is no trade-off in health to health with your opponents, meaning that you can bombard them, while they cannot inflict any damage to your units. Okay, there is always an option, as you see here, that ranged units are fighting ranged units. This can happen often enough. These are the priority targets, so to say. At least for my slingers, who are meant to counter light units. Often enough, you're just going to bombard the infantry in front of those ranged units. The idea for the most ranged units is never to be alone. You don't always have to find someone to defend you. Archers, or any ranged units for that matter, can always go and find themselves infantries who they can support. It isn't all just about the infantries not willing to defend ranged units. It is also about ranged units that aren't looking for dedicated defenders or any defense at all for that matter. As usually, I suggest infantries to protect the ranged units. But then again, there can be many matches where there aren't any infantries willing to defend the ranged units. In those matches, ranged units should just find infantries whom they could follow, behind whom they could stay. I'm not saying that they will defend them, but at least you will have some form of defense when you are engaged. The best scenario is that there is a party member willing to defend you, as you see here. Party of 2 players, Wine Aggro and me. I'm playing the ranged units and he's playing the spearmen. This is the ideal situation, where team member is dedicatingly defending you. He did not get as big of a score as I did, but thanks to him, we were able to win. This is a good example where we're just fighting for the victory. We aren't fighting for the scoreboard, although I get to make it because I'm ranged units. And he gets, well, rather minimal score while actually being very useful. But then again, if you are fighting for the scoreboard, you just want to stay behind your infantries who are going offensive. The reason I am talking about this topic is that I have seen many tier 7, 6 players who are actually very offensive. They don't think of teamwork, what to do, how they could use themselves, and end up practically sacrificing themselves for nothing. Over the last week or so, I have just seen many of these probably new players who just can't manage the ranged units. They don't seem to be aware of what is going on around them. The simplest and most important things with the ranged units are, first of all, spread your units. Secondly, don't do friendly fire into the trade-offs where you have nothing to gain. So if there is infantry fighting infantry, there is no point of doing any friendly fire. But if there are 3 infantries fighting 1 infantry, that might actually be worth it. There is also no point in letting your opponent with the Studo, for example, to farm score upon the damage that you do, or more precisely on the damage that they block. Lately, it just seems that archers are shooting at the Studos for the fun of it. Also, the archer matchups seem to be somewhat weird. There are matches where there are a lot of archers on both teams, or slingers or ranged units in general. And there seem to be a lot of matchups where there are practically none or very few. And in those matchups where there are very few archers, they are extremely valuable. But they just aren't played to their full potential. Even in this match, we had one player with archers on the opposing team, and me with slingers on this team. Because I used the high ground and advantages that I found, I could annihilate those ranged units and manage to take control of the battlefield. I even annihilated the pikemen, and now I'm just harassing some swordsmen. Or more precisely, they are harassing and forcing me. This single ranged unit player in team can make so much of a difference. But often enough, they just don't reach their full potential. They don't use the key locations, they don't use the right moments, and they don't choose the right targets. And I am just trying to make myself count here with these units. I choose important targets, I choose what I can manage, and I choose how I can damage them. For example, this is the studio here. The side was opened, so I could use it for my advantage, just to inflict some lovely damage. Although I did somewhat mess up here, I was hoping to sneak through, but then again I was very afraid of what could happen. So I make the best possible option, just to spread a little, risking one of my units and pulling back the other two. I even baited out the charge. They ended up crashing the cliff, and well, now I just managed to escape. Although I did take some damage, I was still able to outmaneuver them and can now make the difference that matters. I think I played my role here rather well, not perfectly, but well enough. And lately I haven't seen many of these ranged units who use many of these clever maneuvers, baiting out the charges and causing confusion. But still, one of the biggest problems I see with many of the new ranged players, or ranged players in general, is that they have a hard time prioritizing the right targets. Or perhaps it is hard for them to be aware of what is going on around them and what target they should focus. Often enough, there may not be an easy answer for that. But the obvious example would be the stacked opponents. So this match has been really great for me. I have toyed with my opponents, I have tried to focus the right targets, well, at least most of the time, and I have tried to play my best as usual. I managed to get an excellent score, and so. But what is the bad side about defending the ranged units is, as you see, my party member Wynagro didn't get that much of a score. That is also on account of the phalanx, which often enough just doesn't seem to make that much of an impact in scoreboard anyway. While actually being really useful, the scoreboard shows otherwise. And so I can understand why many infantries just don't want to defend the ranged units. If they are dedicated defenders and they don't focus anything else, they might earn pretty much nothing out of that match. While going full offensive, they might earn a bit more, or at least hoping to earn a bit more. So this was pretty much it about the ranged units and their cooperation with the infantries. As I usually say, I fight for the victory, so I don't much care for the scoreboard, but I can understand those grindy players who just want to score to progress and so. If you're playing archers, I highly suggest going behind somebody if there is no one dedicatingly defending you. That is one of the best suggestions I can give, and try to prioritize targets. If Germanicus is out of the studio, try to burn him down. If not, focus someone else. Or if you can, try to burn down opposing archers. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.